So tonight we are so happy to welcome Melissa Koslin. Am I saying your last name right? Koslin?
Koslin.
Koslin. Okay.
Yeah.
So happy to have you here tonight. And for a lot of our readers who are new to you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing?
About myself. Well, I'm been married for 23 years, just had a baby. She's 7 months old. Took us long enough to have a baby, but she's our first and only. I work as a commercial property manager, so you see that pop up in the books every once in a while. Usually something to do with business it pops up in there. And how I got into writing, it was years ago. I had an idea that I had in my head for so long, and I watched an interview of some author, and she explained how she had come up with her first idea, and I'm like, you know what, I have an idea. And I just picked up a notebook and I started writing, and it was god awful. But I read a bunch of books about writing and just read a lot until I got to, pretty decent. And then getting published was crazy because I had a agent for a little while, Mike Napa, and we didn't succeed in selling any of my books. But then he was unable to finish a book that he was under contract with Rebel for, and because of a personal loss, and he liked my writing. Our styles are not dissimilar, and he asked me to finish it for him. So that's how I got started with publishing. So,
well, what was that like, finishing another author's initial story idea?
That was really weird, something I never really wanted to do, to be honest with you, but it was such a good opportunity, and I really wanted to help him. The poor man had lost his wife, and he just couldn't finish it. It was the last, and it was the last in a series. So like I had to read the first two books, get an understanding of, luckily they were individual stories, but still there were still threads that combined. But I had to read the first, I think he had written like 20,000 words, and I had to read that. We talked a bunch, wrote outlines. I wrote a little bit. We talked a little bit more. Yeah, it was a little harder, but it actually worked out pretty well. I don't think you can really tell where he stopped and I picked up. So
I would just think that's a totally different level of pressure, especially if you're finishing up a series for someone, and it's somebody that you like and you want to help them out and do a good job of.
Well, it was such a good opportunity for me.
But his, right?
Yeah, it was a little stressful, but I think it turned out really well.
Oh, golly, that's just amazing. How was that opportunity, or not the opportunity, how did your style then have to change from helping him finish out his series to then writing your own when you were
our styles aren't too dissimilar. As far as our prose is very similar, and then just he doesn't like any kind of romance, but my books usually have some kind of romance, so that was a little different. But I can write not romance too, so not that hard. My style is, there's a little bit more similes and metaphors, and a little bit more colorful language, and he has creativity in his work, but it's a little bit different. So I had to really pay attention to make sure it felt right for the readers who had read already 2 other books.
Mm-hmm. And what about the process portion of it? Because it sounds like that you had been consulting with him on different elements of it. So now you're on your own. Were you bouncing ideas off of your husband, or?
I had written several other books myself already. So I already had my own voice. It was really hard to do his voice and then go back to my voice. So that was a little different.
And what is it that really drew you then to the suspense elements with your current stories?
Well, I'm a 4th degree black belt, so I've been training since I was 13, something like that. So I had 20 years of martial arts training, so that just naturally pops out. I started writing, I didn't know what I was doing, and it just naturally fight scenes just kind of came out. So I go with it. It's fun.
And that's one of the things too. I have to admit, when I first picked up your book, I was like, wait a second, human trafficking, man, this is going to be heavy. I don't know. But then reading it, initially I'm like, oh, okay, so it's kind of damsel in distress, but she's not really a damsel. I mean, and you make that point throughout the book. She's not a victim. And I have to say, I love that aspect of it, because nobody likes to think of themselves as a victim, and what she's doing so that she has a level of control, and how is she recovering. So with the Taekwondo, I mean, is that something that was really critical that you wrap into that non-victimhood, self-sufficiency element into the stories?
I think that's probably part of it, part of why I feel that way. And I do have a daughter now too, so that it's even stronger. And then it's just, I guess it's how I was raised as well. I was raised by a mother who was very strong. She took care of my sister and I. She took care of herself. We never knew how hard it was for her. I know there were times when she had $10 to her name. I didn't know it at the time, but she never let us know, because she was strong enough to be the leader and to step up and not be a victim. So I guess I learned a lot of that from her.
And I think that's true. A lot of times we never realize exactly all the challenges our parents are probably going through when we're younger. That's just how we grew up, right? I mean, for whatever it might have been. And it's only looking back through that lens of history, it's like, oh, yeah, things were a little bit tougher than we kind of figured at that point. But that's, I think, also what draws a lot of us here to these types of books, is that strong heroine. So no matter what kind of circumstances they find themselves in, there's something, that inherent strength of that they are pulling themselves out of whatever that issue. And of course there's help, but how are they overcoming it?
Yeah. And I specifically wanted Liliana to be, because I write a lot of, part of my language, badass women. Never Miss was one of those where she was just a kick butt, but Liliana she's poor, she's only partially educated, she's running in a country where she only vaguely speaks the language, she knows only basic English, and she's scared out of her mind, and she should be a doormat, but she's not. And I love that about her.
And how did you handle the different trauma aspects of it? Because it's not only that she was in a physically dangerous situation with the trafficking and escaping that, but it's all the repercussions after that and the nightmares. And I mean, was there other research that you were doing on the survivor trauma aspect of it?
I guess I just imagine what I would go through. And as far as, I was really, really, really delicate with how I explained what she had been through, because I don't like to read anything that's slightly graphic, anything where it's, a physical sexual abuse. Can't handle it at all. So I didn't want to write it either, but, and I didn't want to, I wanted to get across that, yes, she had been hurt. So it was hard to get that across, but also be delicate. So the editors and they were really helpful. Editors and I went back and forth, said like, okay, does this make sense? Do you get it now? So that it was still very delicately written, but you understand where her trauma is. And that's part of why I wrote the nightmares, so that you would really understand how deeply she was hurt, because she shows such a strong face on the outside.
And that's the other thing too. I mean, it was, like I said, initially I'm like, the human trafficking, I don't know, but it also was very topical, right? I mean, this is what we're hearing about in the news today. So, I mean, you've got the rescue elements, you have the marriage of convenience initially with Merrick, but this is all something that you could foresee or could hear about on the news today, or people that you would run into.
Yeah, exactly. And I think actually we need a lot more light shined on this. So that's really a big reason why I chose that kind of theme.
Do you think that's going to be a not necessarily just the human trafficking, but these real world type elements in your future writing? Do you think this is something you're going to stick with?
Never Miss actually happened accidentally, because Never Miss is about a virus that's that's going to be released as a deadly weapon. I wrote it before COVID, but it kind of sounded like I wrote it like during COVID, so accidentally. But I don't know, I guess I don't really pay attention to where I pull the idea. It's just whether it hits me strongly enough, if it's something that I just really feel deeply excited about, then that's what I'm going to write. because I think that comes through in the book.
And what is your writing day like? I mean, especially now with a 7-month-old at home. I mean, just everything going through pregnancy and everything now with the release of the book and continuing writing with a baby that age. I mean, that's got to be a big shift in focus.
Near impossible. Yeah, near impossible. So right now I'm focusing a lot more on the marketing and such, because I do have a full-time job as well that's very stressful and demanding, and then of course my baby. So just like a few minutes here in the morning and a few minutes at night, or jot down some ideas, just whatever I can fit in.
Well, and also in looking and doing some of the research as a property manager, you said that you do a lot of people watching and that you're always getting ideas from people that you run into. So how are you keeping track of that? I mean, is it, oh, hey, this one's definitely going into a book somewhere sometime. And then do you rush home and make that note, or do you keep a
No,
note?
it's usually just stuck in my head. And then when it's like, oh, wait, that was interesting and that would fit there. And that was really, so.
And is it mostly the scenarios, or is it the quirks of different people?
Quirks of different people mostly.
Mm-hmm. What is the most unusual one that is just still kind of percolating, that you're just waiting?
I saw a man eating a hamburger with a knife and fork one time at McDonald's. Knife and fork.
Even?
I don't even know where he got the knife and fork. I mean, I don't think they have those at McDonald's, do they? I'm not sure.
Not after breakfast. They need it for pancakes, but other than that.
But no, it was in the evening.
No.
So
now I can imagine if it was like a huge hamburger, right? One of those deluxe.
No, it was just like a little
restaurant, but
no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was weird.
That's worse than like eating pizza with a knife and fork. I've seen people do that.
I do that sometimes.
Yeah. Really? Oh, no. It's finger food. I'm okay with eating on the fingers.
But I do not eat hamburgers with knife and fork. That's just silly.
No, that one. Yeah, that's something that definitely needs to go in as some kind of very strange. That's something that needs to go to like the evil bad guy.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in my head just now. Yes. It needs to be the quirky, weird, crazy guy.
Because a normal person would not be doing that. Sorry to any of our listeners who might be eating hamburgers with knives and forks, but no. I would also wonder, because I'm also really interested in your history with the Taekwondo. I mean, being a fourth degree black belt, and then also being an instructor. I mean, there's a huge level of discipline that goes along with that, and having done it for so long. How does that spill over into your writing? And other than just the subject matter, I mean, does the discipline part of it also come into play?
I hadn't thought about it, but maybe, because I'm a plotter, and I like to be very organized about everything. And some writers say that their characters tell them what to write. No, I tell you what to do.
So with that, before you start writing it, do you have essentially the entire storyline mapped out in your head, and then you're just kind of filling in the scenes? Or
I have the outline in a Word file, and then I do allow enough flexibility to, go different directions when, it turns that way. And then as the characters grow and I flesh them out a little bit more, then sometimes a scene will be added here or there or something like that.
So what does the book start with for you? Is it the story that you're plotting out, or is it the idea of a certain character, or is it one particular scene?
It depends. This one is actually the characters first, and I figured everything else out to go with them.
What was the most difficult aspect of this book? I mean, and how did you escape from it in some ways? Because it was a very heavy topic, right?
Yeah. Well, two things. One was the research and making sure that it made sense how the marriage of convenience worked, legally, how it would make sure it, was viable. And then also, like I said before, trying to get across what she had been through without being really explicit about it.
Did you find that you needed breaks from the storyline?
No, because I knew how it was going to end.
And I mean, there were light moments throughout too.
Yeah, exactly. There's playfulness in there, and it's not so much a story of bad things that happened to her. It's a story of redemption and triumph.
Mhm.
That's what I really wanted it to be. So no, I didn't have any trouble writing it.
Mhm. And I think that comes across. It really does. And like you said, I mean, she's a badass character, and it's how she's coming across and moving past all of this and getting that happy ending at the end of the day. You know, not to spoil it for anyone that hasn't read it, but yes. Now, I am curious, because since you said that you had been writing for quite some time before you got published, were all of your books kind of set in the romantic suspense, or did you also, I always find it curious to see what other genres sometimes writers initially start out with.
The first book was distinctly romantic suspense for sure. And then I did a series that was more contemporary romance with a Christian twist.
Mhm.
And then I did do some like young adult paranormal type things as well. So
Mhm.
I've kind of spanned the gamut.
And do you read across multiple genres also?
I actually don't read most of the genres that I write in.
Mhm.
Most of what I read as far as fiction goes is Christian historical.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm always scared that I'm gonna like pull something out of a book on accident and put it in mine and not like, and then sometimes I'm like, I wanted to go this way and I would have written it like this. And then I'm like tweaking it in my head and I'm like, and it's driving me, and I can't have that, suspension of disbelief. So yeah, I like a different topic, different genre.
You want to be able to escape, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
why you're reading. You're doing it for the
Mhm.
enjoyment. And so I can completely understand that. Melissa, I do want to switch over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. Okay, these are some quick off the top of your head type questions. So they
Okay.
shouldn't be too hard, but we've been known sometimes to stump a couple people. Okay. Now, I kind of feel bad for asking this one because it sounds like you've got enough of them, but what is your favorite distraction when you're trying to avoid writing?
I guess reading news articles, I
Oh,
guess.
oh, wow. Okay. Any type, I mean, gosh, I don't even know where to go for that one. Not all exactly positive, uplifting on things.
No, not usually. No, they just frustrate me. I don't know why I read them.
Do you find that you end up like going down the rabbit hole with them? I mean, I find if I start, then it's like, oh, and here's another article. Oh, well, okay, well, let me look at that one. And then next thing I know, it's like an hour later, and it's like, where did my time go?
I usually stick with just the one app, and then
Mm,
once I've read through all of them, I'm just done.
good deal. Okay, but stick with that. Yeah, because I lose so much time. Yes. How do you unwind after a good or a bad writing day?
Do I get to unwind? Did I miss that? No. I play with my daughter, although she's starting to get to the age where, she can sit up on her own. She's starting to stand. She can't stand by herself, but she loves holding on to mommy. Stands at her little activity table, so she's fun. And then we take walks, and so I
So
guess
really at
that.
that fun age right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's developing so much.
Um, what item do you have an absolutely ridiculous amount of?
Besides books.
Of course, right?
Obviously. I collect cobalt glass, so like
Oh,
old
yeah.
bottles, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Yeah, I like those.
And then what do you do with them? I mean, are they on in like various displays around your place or?
Yep,
Mhm.
I think they're pretty.
Cool. My college roommate collected that for years. So I was always on the lookout for it whenever we would go out to various places. What is the most unnecessary thing that you have ever bought online?
Unnecessary thing that I've ever bought online. I don't know. I usually buy like necessary things that I don't want to go to the store for, like hangers.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Those are the real convenience elements, I think, from all the online
Yeah,
shopping now, right?
yeah. Or like, face cream, because you go to the store and there's like a whole wall, and I'm like, I just want this one kind.
If I can get it delivered by
It's so much
8 a.m. the
better.
next morning, then why would I worry about going to the store?
Yeah, pretty much. I go to the store for food.
Who would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Alive or dead?
Anything.
Charlotte Bronte.
Ooh, and why?
Because I love her. Jane Eyre is my favorite book ever. Love that.
What book world would you most want to step into?
Book world.
Yours or anybody else's?
I don't know. I would love to be any one of my heroines. They're awesome. I love them.
What is your favorite writing fuel?
Writing fuel.
Mm-hmm. What keeps you going?
Quiet.
Quiet. So you don't listen to music when you're writing? Do you not listen to music or have TV on in the background? You need
No, not usually. Occasionally I'll put on like a classical music, anything that doesn't have words.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
What era would you most want to live in?
Era. I don't know. I read a lot of historicals, especially a lot of them are like World War I era. I don't know. It's some things are beautiful, but then it would be really, really scary to live during World War I, you know?
Yep.
So
I'm curious with Jane Eyre being one of your favorites, who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
I'm trying to think. It might have been Mr. Rochester that I would really consider the first book boyfriend. Yeah, probably Mr. Rochester. Don't tell my husband.
Now, I always think of Jane Eyre and the Bronte stories as a bit more gothic.
Mhm.
Are you a big fan of that type of genre also? Or is that something more from a historical?
I think it's more the historical.
Mhm.
I do like a dark theme, as you can see in my books. There's usually some darkness in there, so I think that is attractive. But yeah, not necessarily gothic per se.
Mhm. Those were the classic books that my mom had me read. She's like, okay, yes, before you read all this other stuff, you need to read Wuthering Heights. You need to read Jane Eyre, right? You've got to have the exposure of those. So I think I read
Yeah.
those even before I read Pride and Prejudice or any of Jane Austen's.
Except I have to say I hate Wuthering Heights. Hate. Passionately.
Not a Heathcliff
Like,
fan, huh?
no, they're both so dumb. I like they're both people that I just can't stand at all. I don't understand why people like that book. I just don't get it.
They're not my go-to books anymore, I have to say. And they
Yeah.
probably kind of colored a lot of my thoughts initially with some of the romance, like, I don't know about this. But there's much better books now, a wide range. Okay. And again, with a 7-month-old, I can't imagine that you have a lot of time, but what is one new hobby or practice that you've picked up recently?
I don't have hobbies anymore. No. I go for walks with my daughter, and we moved a few months ago, and there's like this little pocket park directly across the street, and they have swings, like, nice big bench swings.
Uh-huh.
So we sit there and we do that every evening.
Cool. Awesome. How do you celebrate a new release?
Promotion. Promotion.
What's the best advice that you've ever received?
I don't know. I think it wasn't direct advice. I guess it was more like soaking it in from him. I used to work with somebody named Kevin, and he was my boss for a while, and he's just so relaxed and easygoing, and it'll be okay. And so he didn't like give me specific words of advice, but just working with him helped me to seep some of that in, which I really, really needed. So I'm going to go with that.
Well, I also want to give you a chance to answer our name game questions that we were asking prior to the interview. So just to remind, what have you been reading, watching, and listening to? And what's the scariest place that you found yourself?
So I'm reading, I guess it's kind of a Bible study of Exodus by Dennis Prager, which is interesting.
So the Exodus, because Deuteronomy, I think, just came out.
Yeah, I heard,
right?
but I have to get through Exodus first because I'm reading it like this much at a time. Um, I'm not watching anything other than my baby, and I'm not listening to anything other than work calls and tenants complaining occasionally. The scariest place I've ever been was my daughter was supposed to be induced, and I was in labor for 30 hours, and her heart rate started decreasing like dangerously. So we ended up going in for an emergency C-section. So the operating room was the scariest place I've ever been in my life.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and
Yeah,
they
I
held
would
her up,
think that would
they put
just,
the little thing, they put the little sheet up, and then they took the sheet down and showed her to me.
Mhm.
And I'm like, is she okay? Is she okay? Is she okay? And that was, yeah.
So the definite wild swing of sheer terror, something could go wrong, to sheer exhilaration that everything's fine.
Mhm.
Wow. And my dad would kill me if I don't follow up on the Exodus thing by Prager. So when you're reading that, are you reading the actual physical book, or have you been
Yeah.
doing that as an e-reader?
No, physical book.
The physical book. So you're getting all of the extra images and all of the illustrations he has. Yeah. Dad's been reading the ebook because he has to look up a lot of stuff.
Well, I
He's
like
right
the
now
physical
debating on
book.
what he's going to order for the Deuteronomy.
I like the physical book because I'm a underliner and note taker when I'm reading something like that. So
Mhm.
I like.
Yeah. So Melissa, what is the best way for our readers to keep in touch with you and follow what you're doing?
So my website is melissakoslin.com, and you can also sign up for my newsletter on melissakoslin.com. I don't spam you a whole bunch, I promise. Just occasional emails. And then I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all Melissa Koslin.
And we just received a copy of Dangerous Beauty in our fresh fiction box, Not to Mix. So we're all reading that now, but what can our readers look forward to next from you?
Well,
Because we
we'll
always want
see.
more.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't have any more contracts at the moment, but I have ideas to make Dangerous Beauty a series.
Oh,
Won't tell you exactly who the people would be involved in that, but
okay.
yeah.
All right. So we'll have to keep in touch with the newsletter and the website to stay on top of that. What a
Yep.
tease. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sticking around after the interview for our Q&A with our readers.
Thank you for having me.